programming languages. Step-by-step instructions for any beginner for a specific tool or programming language that would give you a good crash course. Where to begin? How to quickly adapt with a strong foundation? We will cover the most popular and difficult aspects of many tools and languages as we go. Today, we will cover Rust programming language. This session is with a Malaysian programmer where I am the mentor and clearing the doubts. Since the content is too long, hence I have divided it in parts, else the video would have been too long. So, let's get started.
Obviously, all these languages are object oriented, and whenever you create any variable or any object, so there is a memory allocated in the heap, right?
Mm.
So that heap allocation, we don't define it as a developer, we don't define where it has to go. That efficiency or that concurrency came from Java itself. But then when that object is not required anymore, there has to be a collection, and that was done by garbage collector. And that was a difficult thing for us as a developer to track, because we were not sure when that Java collector came in picture, and this collected the destroyed variables or the object. And that is why Rust has even fixed this issue of garbage collection, which was
Mm.
not an issue in Java. But then yes, the concurrency or the memory management was little difficult to understand for a developer, and even to manage it at run compiler in Java. And Rust is Rusty, something very similar they've developed, but then their compiler of Rust is very efficient. Most of the the coding or the development that you do in Rust is fixed at compile time. I hope you
Mm.
know what's compile time. Most of the time the compiler is basically checking your syntax, your anything that the language has defined. You're going anywhere wrong, it will show you the error at the compile time. Now that's the main point of Rust. It is not only fixing it, what the syntax has been defined in Rust, it's also taking you to a level of logic. It's also
Mm.
trying to, the testing time is reducing. Why? Because it's also doing some testing by the compiler itself while compiling the code, which was earlier done in, at least in Java, it is done at runtime. So, but Rust is doing it the other way around. That's why we are like nowadays, if you see, we are even using it to blockchain, cryptocurrency. We are using it to that level. So
Okay,
obviously,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think in current scenario, that is the most difficult thing to develop currently. Any app that's for cryptocurrency or, but see, thing is, if you learn anything from a mindset that it's difficult, then you won't be able to achieve. It's a
Yeah, you
step
are
by
right.
step process, and if you go on the right path and just put in 1 hour, 2 hour daily for that, even a difficult thing, by the end of 1 month or 2 months, you will find it easy. So one day when I didn't know Java, it was difficult for me to understand what is compiler, what is interpreter, how to run the code, how to test the code. But now it's easy, right? So over the
Yeah, I
years, you
understand.
learn things and you know that it's not that difficult. But
Okay.
initially, everything sounds difficult. So it's okay.
Okay. I understand. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
encouragement.
So let's start a brief. I've given a introduction to Rust programming. Let me just reverse, Katie. You have understood what I told you. Just tell me in your words if you want.
Yeah,
Can
you
you tell
mentioned
me?
that. So you mentioned that Rust is harder than C++ and Java. Rust is memory safe. It handle memory stuff in compile time, not only runtime, like JVM. And then Rust also better in safety compared to C++. Uh, Rust is hardest to learn, but every day you learn something, then after 1 year maybe you can become better. In
No, no,
general,
no.
what
Don't
you say?
don't take it for 1 year. That's too long time. Target for two
1 year.
months, and then probably you
Oh,
will at least achieve it in 4 months. No, 1 year is a very long time. If I had
so
taken
one
one
year
year
is
to learn Java, then I would have never been a developer. You keep,
1 year is too long. For
yeah,
two
it's
months,
too
2 months.
long. 2 months is
Okay, okay.
fine. So, because
Because
you
because
keep
we do know.
improvising.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, understand. Because we do know. So maybe because we also I'm a programmer. That's why it's not
Yeah,
very hard
that's
to learn
why.
other language. Okay,
Exactly.
okay.
You're
Maybe
already a programmer.
yeah, 2 3 months. Then yes.
Definitely. Let's keep a target of 2 months. And if not,
Can
then we'll keep creating. We are using Rust for system application and programming both. What is the main point of Rust programming language? Just little theoretical, and then from the next session we'll start with the coding stuff, because
okay,
you
good.
need to have a little bit background before you start writing any single piece of code. So
Okay.
Rust is also focusing on how to develop managing the memory. It is also focusing on speed and security and performance, all four of the things at a go, which I
Okay.
don't think so any other language right now has that power to focus on
Yeah,
all
yeah,
those four areas at a go. And that's
yeah,
why it's super efficient.
yeah.
We are building games, we are building operating systems. There's no new operating system that has come up, but if you check Mozilla in the from past till now, I have used Mozilla for about 25 years, and I think so the speed of Mozilla currently is way better than it used to be 15 years ago, because they've used Rust programming to fix it. We are building operating systems also using it. This is the brief history which I've already given it to you, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
let's
you
do it.
mentioned.
Okay, now,
Okay.
why is it so special? Why is this language so special? Why is it solving the problem the developers of C and C++ had? So, main thing that the problem of C and C++ developers was a memory leakage or a concurrency programming issue. As a
I
programmer,
came across with concurrency, but I not 100% understand what is concurrency mean.
okay, so broadly, we'll keep discussing memory leakage and currency as we go. But yes, for now, just understand the concept. Like concurrency is basically how your at the time your application is running, how at the background your memory is being used and then also being free.
I summarize what you say is concurrency basically how you deal with memory.
How synchronously it is behaving with memory, occupying memory and then releasing memory both. That's
Okay,
concurrent.
understand.
Has made Rust a more reliable, a faster, and you have, as a developer, you have more control on the memory. And that's why it's like the low level programming that we used to write, it has a more modern approach rather than the traditional approach.
Yeah, yeah,
You have
Java
any
for
idea?
now pointer exception. Yeah, I know.
I think so. Every developer has faced a very hard time fixing the null pointer exception, which Rust has fixed. You don't need to deal with null pointer because there is nothing as null in Rust. There's no
Okay.
null value. It will have associated any or some memory is being allocated to the object.
Yeah, we do have multi-threading.
Okay, let me give
Uh,
you a real life example. Google Chrome. Just have a look at your
mm,
task manager. Okay, open the task
mm,
manager and see these are the
mm,
threads, because as a developer you must know how that memory is allocated, and to understand that you need to take
mm,
some real life example. Now, whenever you
okay.
open a new tab, you might have, I just have 5, 6 tabs, and it has already opened 19 for me. So these are 19 threads that Google Chrome is managing at parallel, and that memory allocation by Google is handled in this way. As soon as you open Google Chrome, it will already open 5, 6 threads for you. These are all threads actually, and its
Mm,
runtime, it's managing how it's efficient, because it's creating multiple threads of one instance and parallelly doing a multitasking of assigning some portion of the memory to each thread.
mm.
And that's the basic concept of multi-threading.
In an operating system like you open currently you open PowerPoint, right, and then you also open Google Docs. So this also consider multi-threading, right?
Yes, definitely this is also multi-threading, but this multi-threading is of your threading and multitasking are two different concepts.
Okay.
Both concepts
Oh,
come
yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
something that is working parallelly, memory system, memory allocation.
Okay.
That's
Understand.
multitasking. Why they kept the name Rust? It's very interesting that why they say it. They say that we have a very rough metal and we are fixing that rough metal to make a coating over it. So they are actually making a coat over the hardware system. That's what Rust programming believes. For
Yeah.
programming, just
Y-
to type
Yeah,
simple hello world. This is the
yeah. You
syntax.
look.
Yes, definitely. Because if you don't write a code, you will never learn. So the first step
Yeah,
is
you're
just
right.
quickly go through the basics and start writing a code. Because as soon as you start writing code, you will learn more. So from the next session, we'll start writing code also. But now
Okay,
you
good.
need to understand a very important point, that the memory allocation of Rust is not on the hardware. It's fairly on the hardware. That's a big highlight. And do you understand what's the difference that memory allocation or system programming is not on the hardware?
But you say that.
Okay, so this is a little homework that I'm giving you. Go back
Okay,
and check how memory is allocated in C, C++, how memory
okay,
is allocated in Java. Either create a sheet, either create a PPT, whatever way you can find. Just broadly define how memory is allocated in C, C++, Java, and Rust. Four of them. And it will be crystal clear to you how memory works. Runtime, it is different from the other languages, and that's your task to do. So I'll leave this thing over here and we'll discuss that on Wednesday.
okay,
More on why C++ and any other language, even if it's Python, Java, or any other language, they are like have less control. And why less control? Because the runtime code, we have no control. We run it, we test it, and then see if it's performing the way we have designed it or not. But Rust is different. It has more control. Why? Because most of the testing is done by the compiler itself. So it's saving you time because compiler is doing the most of the part, right? And in C++, there was control. So you could have tested it earlier, but then there were less safety. Had safety issues and one has less control. And Rust has fixed both of them. It has more control. It is more. Now, why is Rust used and who all are using Rust? It's not very important, but then yes, I just added it randomly. Obviously, developers use it. Even students are using it for creating games. Very small games are coming up which are designed in Rust, and students are generally. It's a open source. I hope you know, like Java, Rust is also
yeah,
open source, and I hope you know what's open source.
yeah. I know, I know.
Okay, so what's open source?
Also, open source is a source code that transparent to everyone. Yeah, something. Like
Yeah. So
the short answer.
anybody who is not a product owner can also add to the API. You know what's an API? I'm sure.
The specification you can interact with or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Application programming interface.
Or a API, application
That
programming
yeah.
interface.
So the
Yeah.
API of any language is restricted, like C and C++ is not open source. Nobody who is not the owner can come and add to C++. But Java is open source and so is Rust is open source. Any third party can come and add to the API of Java or Rust. So when I say that, we'll just
Okay.
quickly discuss the naming conventions.
Oh, okay,
It's
okay.
very important. It's easier to understand, and it's just something that we need to follow simply. And as a practice, like when you keep writing the code, just make it a practice to follow this. So any module that you name, use this. For the types, you use camel case, and for modules and create, you use snake case. So snake case is at value level, and camel case is at type level. Okay, these are just simple things. I think so. You were talking about it. I am sure you know about it a little bit. So camel case starting with a capital letter and lifetime lowercase values with a smaller letter. Very simple. Just follow it and that's it. And you've already written and compiled. I just want to stop presenting the PPT wait and come to the code now.
Okay, good.
Cool. Yeah, so
Code.
I'm using this online because
Yeah.
I don't code these days, so I don't have a setup. I don't use IDs because that consumes a lot of memory and space. I'll share the link with you. I'll mention it in
Okay.
the resources today at the end
Okay.
of the session, and you can use it.
All
Just
right. Good.
write the code and execute. It does all the work. It will compile. It will show everything and see.
Okay.
It's easier to use and done very quickly. Okay. So what before moving ahead with the coding things or the concepts around it, I wanted to ask you, have you ever tried using, trying, if I remove this bracket and execute this code, what will the error that it's going to show me?
Type of error I'm not sure, but I definitely know it can't work, sir. Or I don't know what the
Yeah.
error will be thrown.
Okay. So right from the start, because in the beginning, doing this thing is very easy to do. When when you're writing larger codes or bigger files, it's difficult to do that same thing. So what we are trying to achieve here is, okay. So I said that whenever you develop longer programs or bigger codes, and you are used to seeing these errors because you know why. If I miss this, this will be the error. So right now, trying to find out what the error will be if I remove this is easier. But later
Okay,
on, it will be difficult. Then we will
okay,
have to learn from scratch what is the error, where the error is coming, and
okay,
the best part of a developer is quickly fixing or quickly solving the problem. I see not a good developer who writes a good code or quickly writes the code. I see who can fix the problem. So problem fixing is a primary thing. So we will do all the programming from a point of view where we can quickly fix a Rust program, and that will be our USP. I mean, that's how I see development. Do you agree with
okay.
that?
Yeah, I agree. So I need to get familiar with the error message.
Okay, you are familiar with the message?
Uh, Unexpected close delimiter.
So
Uh,
delimiter. So it's showing
Delimiter.
it's your delimiter. It's showing what is not closed, but see, it's showing a closing bracket, whereas we are missing an opening bracket.
Uh,
You see the difference? So probably the errors that come up are not exactly the same. So we
yeah.
have to find out where the problem is. It's saying at line 5, but you see it's
So
not at line 5. Actually, the thing is missing on third line.
yeah. This
See that?
is yeah.
Okay. So
But
that's what we need to find out, that why this happens. If
okay.
there is no opening bracket, then why is this closing bracket? They are saying that this closing bracket is not required when there's no opening bracket. So the error comes where why the closing bracket is there, and then we need to find out. Okay, there's extra closing. Either there's one case there's extra closing bracket, or there's no opening bracket. There could be two cases.
So I think this code can work right without the third line and fifth line. Or let's say I remove
Okay,
the
let's remove
all
both of
the
them. What happens?
can I
Let's see what happens. Now it's saying the function needs the opening. So the first error is expecting the opening bracket. Second is unexpected token. So it's not recognizing this as anything. Main, what is println? So let's discuss it over here so that we can even write the code and then see what's the difference. Uh,
okay.
any any program like in Java, even Rust, main is the starting point of your program. I mean, more or less programming languages are same, but yes, syntax change. Some features they add in some features are there, some are not there. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's remove one of the brackets and execute. First error, it's giving again via this delimiter because it's not
Yeah,
understanding why you're giving the
this
delimiter.
one the error message a bit misleading, I think. You
Yeah,
don't
that is the reason why we need to check all these things, because when you write a longer code, you will see, oh, so many errors. But see, only one single bracket has given me three, four errors.
mm,
So it's like just fix one bracket and all the errors will go.
yeah, understand.
No, see, the compiler for any programming language behaves in the same way. So it depends on the compiler. This
Okay.
online tutorial or the ID will all have Rust compilers only. This is your first homework. When you run this in your ID, because I'm running it in online, do one thing. Just remove one bracket in main and write the piece of the code on Word doc and see what is the error coming. Copy that error and paste it there on the Word doc. To see the difference, what error comes here on the online tutorial that I'm using and on the ID that you are using. We'll see if the compiler is behaving in a different way.
Okay, okay.
Remove the semicolon and see what's the error.
Yeah, no error.
No error.
Uh,
Imagine, because there's just single line. If I hope I write, I'll try to write one more. Now it's giving me, because that semicolon is stating end of line, and now I've written multiple lines, and it's saying what is all this? It's unexpected operator, so many lines. So now the compiler is confused. But as soon as we put the semicolon, it's not confused. For single line code, it's expecting, okay, there's just one line, so it's fine.
okay, understand.
So you know why that semicolon is used.
The semicolon is like make a distinction between two
Between
line
two
of
lines.
codes.
Now let's discuss this println. Println, and there is an exclamator. Can you see that? There are two things in Rust. One, we have the functions, and
Mm,
uh, one is we let me go to the PPT again and quickly run through few things. Can you see this?
yeah, I can.
Okay. So it's just saying that when you try to understand the program, println with a exclamation mark is not a function, it is a macro. See, let me know if it's readable, otherwise I'll just present
Okay,
it.
so what you meant is it is a macro. It is not a normal function. That's why.
Yes, it's a macro and it's not a normal function. And what is the difference between a macro and a normal function is that a function will be called at runtime and the code will be executed then. But a
So
macro, as soon as the function, the line where the function is written reaches the compiler or the runtime, the executor goes to that function and then executes those codes. It is the function code is compiled, but at the what it has to perform does that at the runtime. But macro, although compiling is done at the compile time, it comes at as part of the code, and there is nothing that is done at the runtime. It's all done at the compiled uh, time, and it's written as a code as part of the code. So it just prints. That's it. That's the difference between a macro and a function. Is that clear? Do you have any questions on that?
just now you mentioned macro is can you repeat again macro?
Okay. So macro is something that
Okay.
anything that you write that has an exclamation in the end. You see this
Yeah,
mark?
yeah, yeah, yeah. This one no.
That clearly states it's a macro. Now, what is
Okay.
the difference between a macro?
Okay.
Macro is at compile time because it
Okay, okay,
has a
okay.
set
Understand.
operation or a set instruction to perform. So it is done at compile time, and whatever execution is done, it's written there in the compile time. It's not called at the runtime. It will be
Okay.
because we know that print has to print some text, so it will simply include it in the compile with the compiler
Okay,
and
understand.
print it. Okay. Since it's a predefined function, so obviously when we have predefined functions, we know what the function is expecting to do. But when we write user defined later on, then also the same thing will happen. What is a macro? Let me just again repeat a little bit. It will be included in the source code and it just gets compiled with the rest of the program. And we've covered that. Okay. So comments and rest.
Yeah, it's the
Have you?
same this one. Yeah.
I
J-
think so.
I-
All the languages have the same comment, single line, multiple line, have the same comments everywhere. But
Yeah, I
we'll
think
do
Java,
the
yeah, yeah, almost all the same. Yeah.
all of them answer the same. Okay. But still, we'll do quickly. Obviously, this doesn't make any difference. So now, what we'll do, I'll just move this. So it does not understand single slash, obviously. This is again very good practice that when we are writing codes, and suppose you have, multiple line of codes here. Say, for example, you have four lines written here. So always make sure to write a comment what this block is doing. So any feature, any portion of your code that you know is doing something, just make sure you write a comment, because maybe 6 months back, or sorry, not back, 6 months later, you might need the code again. And if you write those comments, you will know that this part is going to perform this.
Yeah, I
So
know.
it will be helpful for you, and maybe you give your code to some other developer, for him also or her also, it will be easier to understand if there's multiple comments written there. we have two syntax, or two arguments or two placeholders to declare a variable. So one is for the println. If we define a string or a text that we need to print in the println, we will use this two curly brackets to print it as a placeholder. One placeholder is these two curly brackets. Second placeholder is just a variable name or a constant that is also as a placeholder. We have these types similar to Java. There's integer, there's floating, boolean, character. So you
Yeah,
know
but
what's an integer? Yeah.
yeah, I think I know this. Integer is from negative. I think negative 2 power or something to
Yes.
two
So
power.
all minus numbers to all positive numbers is an integer, and it does not have a decimal place. For decimal place, we need to use floating point. So floating point is 4.5, 3.6, whatever. Any decimal place is floating. Boolean is true and false, obviously. So, 0 or 1, or true and false, the full word. Character is a single letter within the single quotes. So
Yeah.
these are the types.
But this
Uh,
this one is different than Java. Java got primitive type and object type. I think this one don't have, right?
yeah, it doesn't have all that. It's just primitive scalar types. That's all. Now, some rules for naming a variable, which obviously almost all developers follow, but still, just to reiterate that you should follow some. Like if you are mentioning someone's salary, so use the word salary for the final salary that you have. If it's a fees, mention it as a fees. So all of these things. Don't use a uppercase. Always use a lowercase for a variable. Never use uppercase. I'm sure you know all that, but write this code out there. This is basically a variable and how to use it as a placeholder. We just said let the name of the integer and the value that it holds. This is a float, so we've written this and the placeholder for it.
Okay.
I'm sure this
So,
is clear. Anything you have to ask?
okay. Line three. You don't mention the types there, so it will automatically convert to integer, right? I mean,
Yeah. So when you're not defining, it will automatically convert. Simple syntax, obviously. There are two ways or for declaring a variable. One is where you define the type, whereas this is where you don't define the type. So when I don't define the type, like I mentioned in fees, as you were also saying, that was where I'm not defining what type it is. And second one is where I'm defining the type. So I'll mention the name of the variable, there will be a colon and then the data type. Fine. That was your question, right?
yeah. You're right.
Very important part of defining any variable are what is immutable and what is mutable.
Immutable
So
means cannot be deleted. Yeah.
yeah, so it cannot be changed basically. Once the value has been assigned, it cannot be changed.
Yeah.
That value is bound. That value is a fixed. So you have to create something else to probably change that value, but it is immutable. That's the concept. So like if you are aware of immutable string concepts in Java, are you aware
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that?
Yeah, that's why they need something like string builder, right? If you use string, it will destroy it and then create again. So if you amend it.
So for string concept, what immutable concept basically to define that, I'll just tell you. If we are using four strings in a code, once one string is defined, that string value is not destroyed. It always has storage in where we have to very carefully define our data types so that we know what memory space they are occupying. So when string handling in Java was very typical because it always used to occupy the memory, it was immutable. Even if I add a new string to it, it will not be, it will create a new object for that string. It won't be that, one variable is assigned to that string, then it will be added to that string. No, one variable of that string will be there in the memory, and then the second one will be created. So we will have two, and that's what immutable does, and it occupies a lot of memory. So we have to be very careful not to use too many immutable, but yes, we have to use in some cases, like we are defining the piece, so we have to do that. Is that clear? I mean, anything you want to ask about immutable? Okay, so Java does have, I don't know if you remember or not, but Java string immutable problem. It's not a problem actually, it's the concept how Java uses, because
Yeah,
once the string value is assigned, it will always stay in the memory. So if you want to you reuse, you can just pick it from the memory, you don't have to define it again. But then it will occupy the memory. So that's why they came with that string buffer concept, so that you can keep adding to it. Or there were various concepts later in Java that came up, and now obviously that problem is not there, but still, yes. Okay, let me execute. You saying it will throw an error
as you mentioned, it is immutable, so I think you throw error at line 7.
because we are actually it's already defined, right? So we can't use it again. Mutable then?
First is able to reassign again. Maybe the correct word is reassign.
Yeah, it's able to, like, we can keep changing the value of the variable.
Yeah, but I think line 3, I need to add this slash.
Yeah. So again, we have this one. The first variable is mutable, so we have defined the data type here, right? And this is the placeholder for it. So let me just comment this one. So do you think it will show error now?
Oh, it is a warning. It's not an error.
Yeah, this is just a warning and it's not an error. But
Yeah.
here, oh, it is printing fees here.
But warning, we
It's
also need
saying
to
it
take care.
doesn't need to be mutable because you're using it only once. You're not updating, you're not making any changes, and why you're making it mutable. So it's just telling you to do that. That's it.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. So you're clear with the both the concepts, and probably I think so. Once you try to write more code, then you will be more aware of what's mutable, what's immutable, right?
No.
Let's quickly go through the constants, and then we'll. So we have certain constants, and we just define the data type, write a variable const against it, and that will be a fixed value. We can use that as a fixed value.
Mm.
Like, we have to define a percentage, we have to define a pi value, and something like that. So we use constants for that. So that is a fixed value. That means that we are defining something as this value will always hold the same number. There is a little bit difference that how string is handled in Rust, not like a major difference, but yes, a little bit difference. So we have two types of strings, and one is literal and one is an object. So it's not always that string is creating an object. Here we've just declared a statement, let company str equals to tutorial point. So this is basically not creating any object of a string. It is just creating a literal. So these are called literals, where we just define a simple value, and it is a placeholder, and then we can just simply print it on the console, or maybe use it for the other coding purposes, or, like, for just for any declaration or anything. So these are simple, and then we create an object like this. So any object that we create, so any object, when we create what is the difference between when we create an object and when it's a string is only a literal? Do you know what is the main difference between the two?
Already 2 years not in Java, but I think that it's the same.
No,
In
it's
Java,
not the same.
it's not the same.
No, it's not the same in Java. It's not the same in Rust also. Basically, the difference between the two is when you create a literal. In case of a literal, it's not allocating any memory on heap. It is only uh, placed in the string pool. So there is a pool of strings which is there, and creating a literal is only a pool of that string, and that's it. It will keep the string in that pool. It won't create any memory allocation for that. But when you say new, it means it will have a specific memory allocation on the heap, and that's why we are creating an object for it. So that is a very major difference between a literal and creating an object for us. We have to
So
be very clear and sure about it, because when we are programming, we should know when to use a literal and when to create an object first.
I still don't
Yeah.
understand why we use
So basically, we use objects so that we have it stored in a very specific place and can come back and use the same object. In case of literals, it's more or less like a static value, which is
okay,
there and there is no change. But in case of objects, we can apply various functions over it. We can, add more to it, And there are various reasons which, like as in when you code, you come to know that why you need to create an object for a string. So it allocates a proper memory for that string, and where it's only a literal, it can come from the pool, and then we can, create another pool from that. So it's just printing these simple strings, right? Now, let me take one more variable for the same literal. I won't change the literal, but just change the variable. Did you see that error warning?
Yes.
Okay, so one, it is saying we are not using it, so it's just a warning. Sorry, it was not error. It's just a warning because we are not using that variable. So that's fine. We can ignore it. But
Mm.
if I change here, if I say rather than companies, I will use it like this. Sorry for the spelling mistake. Now, when I execute this and I print this tutorial's point, do you think which value it is picking, the first one or the second one? In this case, because it's a literal, it's the same. There is no
Okay.
difference. For us as a developer, it is one is company, second one is companies. But for the programming language or for the internal purpose, it's the same. So
Okay.
this is one, and even this is one for it.
Mm.
Okay. But when we create an object, even if this value is same, still it will be treated as two different things because
Mm.
it will have a different memory allocation. In that same heap, one will have a different space and the other one will have a different space. So for the concept of when you're writing it, you don't see the difference. But when it's at the compiler time or at the runtime, the values are two different values when you create it as new. So let's take an example of creating it. The first one is an empty string, right? We haven't given it any value.
Mm.
Second one is again tutorial. So we're just using a length function to see which has a length or which does not have. Now to show you what I meant is, okay, so even if the length of both of these is 14, because the this is also tutorial point, this is also tutorial point, obviously that length is same, but these are two different strings. It is not the same string.
Mm.
Internally it is treating as two different strings and has a different allocation for both of them. So for runtime, it is two different objects or two different allocation in the memory. But if you create a literal, so over here,
Mm.
this Hyderabad, it is the same. Like it is only from the pool. It is not creating any space on the heap. But
Mm.
these two will have different spaces. And if I change this text again, same. If I make this same, then what will be the difference between the two?
So three of them are different, right?
Okay, so now in this case, tutorial point, first one, the company's tutorial point, that is just a little, that is, it is only picked from the pool where it is already existing for the compiler. So it's already there, you just have to pick and print. That's it. But for these two, the content string two, these are two different things and are taken from the heap. Do you understand what I'm trying to explain here?
Yeah. So you mean that the second of the object is taking from the heap, right? And literal is taking.
So it is in the background we have a pool of strings. So this tutorial point will be same treated whenever I use it. So even if I create another literal, it will be same. But
Okay.
for content string and content string 2, these are two different things. It's not about what content it has. It's not about the string that it has. So it's not about the tutorial point it has. It is about that it's a new object. It's a completely new creation for the programmer. So this is
Yeah. So
one.
yeah, okay, I understand. I think I understand. So meaning the second one is take more memory and it is a
No,
new
it's not
memory.
about which is. No, it's not about which is taking more memory. It's not about more memory allocation. It might have the same memory allocation, but
Oh,
it will occupy a new space
okay, okay.
every
Yes.
time I. Every time I create an object, it will occupy a new memory. So if I
Yeah, I
create
understand.
4, 5, it will have 4, 5 memory spaces for it. But the
Okay.
first one, which is a company tutorial point, and I create 4, 5 tutorial points, only a literal will be the same tutorial point. There will be no memory allocation for it. So
Yeah,
it
I
won't
understand.
occupy the memory space. So as a programmer, if you want the strings to pick from the pool because you know that the string will remain same, create a literal, don't create an object. But if you want it to take a new space in the memory, then create a string object because you
Okay.
want to differentiate it. Maybe down the line in the code you want a new object for it, you want to make some changes and keep the difference or keep it to a different space, use new.
Okay.
So
I
it's
didn't understand.
from the development perspective that how you will be using
Yeah, got
it.
it,
So
got it.
that's very important because down the line when you code, you can't just like blindly say, okay, this is a literal and this is an object, because there is a difference between the two, and which is a very major difference.
Mm,
Let me know if it's clear because this is very important.
okay. I understand. So first one, the literal is let's say two literal point to the same string, then you use a same memory space. But object, although the string value is the same, but it always have a new space in memory.
Exactly. It's good to have in mind, but yes, you can always go back. Have a new is to create an object. Two string is like when we are using multiple strings and we would just want to make it a single string, we use the two string function so that
Yeah,
it
it looks like Java.
yeah, the functions are very much like Java. So I haven't seen much difference between Java and Rust.
Yeah.
But yes, there are still differences, and the later part of Rust programming does show a lot of difference. The initial thing, the syntax and declaration functions, is more or less the same. So
Mm,
yeah. Then
understand.
there's replace. If you want to replace some keywords in between, you can all use all these functions and see how they are working. Or maybe just when you code, you can do that. That's fine.
Okay.
Then there is length that we just use so to decide what is the length of the string. And trim is to like sometimes while coding you don't know, you just enter the value and then the string starting point or the end point has some spaces. So to replace those spaces or to delete those spaces, we use trim. I'm sure you must have used it. Very, very commonly used. Then we have the macros. The very first macro we used in print, if you
Yeah, yeah.
remember, print itself is a macro. And why we call it a macro and not a function? Uh, can you tell me? Because I explained it that way. What is a macro and what is a function?
Um, function, of course, everyone know is like a method in Java. Macro is executable in compile time, as you mentioned that day.
Yeah, very right. So any macro that is created which has an exclamation mark, it is already the code is there on the, so whatever executable, it is done at the compile time. It's not done at the
Mm.
runtime. Method is being called always at the runtime.
So
Uh,
macro is called in the compile time, right?
Basically, these are predefined. For Rust, it says that these are some predefined, um, uh, keywords we know. We know what println has to do. So why not do it at the compile time rather than going at to the executable stage and then making the execution even more slow? Just to make the execution fast, they have introduced macro, which earlier Java didn't have. So the
Mm.
execution becomes faster because of that. So when you
Okay, okay.
compile the code, it knows that you have to print this value at compile time only. It will pick the value and then runtime it will just display it.
Understand,
So the
understand.
execution won't happen at runtime.
If possible, whenever we should use macro more than function.
I mean, if there is something predefined, if there is something that you know can, you already know what the statement will do, then yes, obviously use a macro. Don't use a function for that. But yes,
Understand.
major code, major programming has to be done through functions because we write our own logic. It's not predefined, so the logic is not predefined. So we have to write functions which will happen. And then the operators, it is also very similar to Java only, but
Yeah, you.
still I'll just quickly go through it. There are arithmetic operators, there is bitwise comparison, logical, bitwise, and conditional. So arithmetic is obviously plus minus and all. Bitwise is again 0 and 1. Comparison is like less than equal to, and this logical is that ampersand, you remember? Double ampersand is used for and
Yeah, I know
the
that one is and
pipe
two
sign.
two.
So these are the relational operators, the greater than sign, less than sign, equal to. So for double equal, it's equality, an exclamation, and equal is not equal. Might be using it already. Then these are the logical operators, double and pipe, which we just discussed. And then the single exclamation is for not, which we often use in the for loop or the conditions, if and else. And then the bitwise operator, a single ampersand, which is used for and, single pipe sign used for or, then this little arrow that we use for XOR, which is rarely used, but yes, you can still use it. After the operators, I've just quickly skipped the operators because that is very easy, I know, relatively.
Yeah,
Then let's come to the conditioning part, because that is obviously you might be doing it or using it already, the if and else. So we will also just quickly cover this. Um, One, we have a simple if condition and then the statement. Let's do one. So as we know that if we put this number is
yeah. This
greater than 5, if I put -1, what will happen?
you put -5, then nothing print.
So yeah, so this an if condition, and if I put full sign here, can we do that?
Yeah,
No.
you can't do that. You this one greater than should be before the equal value.
I put 0 here.
Nothing happened. I think. Yeah, don't. Yeah, this one I understand.
Yes, then actually why I'm doing all this is because uh, we don't try all these things at a very early stage. Like right now it's easier to see what the error will be because we just have a 3 line of code. So just again and again changing those values, changing the conditions, and seeing what the error will be helps you in long run, because when you writing larger codes, quickly you can identify, okay, if this is the error, I might have made this mistake. So every code you write at this stage,
Yeah,
make
I
sure
need to
you
build
just
a
keep
strong.
making little changes so that we know what the error will be. So I've just added this greater than sign and equal to. Do you think this will give me an error?
Thing should be not error, but don't. There's not no output. Yeah.
There will be no. I changed this num greater than and equal to. I put an equal to sign here.
Oh, okay, okay. Then yes, you see.
We have this operator. Yes, we do have that operator.
This one also the same. You see the same output number is positive.
Think of a scenario where that can give me an error, because just trying to find out what all things can give me errors. If I use something like this, an operator, will it
Yeah, this one
compile?
you face error. This one in compile time.
Right, because this is not an operator. And if I
Yeah.
remove this
In
less than sign and then execute,
this one okay.
okay,
In
we have.
in JavaScript there are three equals. You will see three equals, but I don't think in Rust. So sorry, JavaScript. So equal, which is working in JavaScript but not in Java or Rust.
Okay,
This one is
let's
working in JavaScript. Yeah,
let's try here if it has triple equals. No,
yeah,
it doesn't have.
it cannot.
So this is simple if condition. Obviously, you might have done this. Let's move forward with the others. This is the if statement, and then we have if else. Let me write a code of it. So suggest some changes so that we can see how this if else can be made better, or how we can get any error or changes.
Line number 6, the modular operator, is it? That one is modular operator.
Yeah, it's a modular operator. Yes.
Yeah, and you maybe change to
Change to,
other value like exclamation mark. Definitely got problem.
yeah, it
Yeah,
is showing. And let's num not to. Right?
this one of
Okay.
course not an expression. I think. Yeah, of course this one should works. Yeah, this one works, but it print odd. Yeah,
Right.
odd.
And if I do something like if else,
This one it won't work
okay,
because
so why it doesn't work?
you need to have a condition after if.
Right. So every if we use, every nested if we use should have a condition. Otherwise, it's only else. Only then it
Yeah.
will work.
Yes, you're right.
How many else if can we nest? Any idea?
Uh, as many as possible.
As many as possible. So there's no limitation, right? I don't
I
think
think
so. Any language has any limitation.
I guess so.
And yeah, I also write 2 3 programs with for coding that I
Mm.
then apart from if else we have something called match statement here
Yeah, this is
wherein
like
we
Swiss
can,
statement. I think.
yeah, it is like switch statement in Java. So it is like you assign a value and then define 4 5 values, and then if it matches it will show it to you. Let's do a code little bit. This will execute fine, obviously, because it has a value over there and then it matches. If I say something like this, what will happen?
Yeah, the variable name is not found.
Right, because it's not defined.
Mm.
Change this to GA. What will happen now if I execute?
Get GOA. You get state name is GOA. Yeah.
And if I change something right here, colon or something, what will happen? Gives
Yeah.
me an error, right? Because there's a syntax issue. Can't
Yes.
use variable. So this is a simple match statement which you can define a value and then see. After this, we have the loops.
Yeah.
Let's continue with the loops.
Okay.
We have while loop, we have loop itself, something in Rust, and then we have for loop also. So let's again write a code and see how it is working, because obviously the concept wise, I'm sure you might be knowing what are the loops and might be using it
Yeah.
well.
But in the comment section you write 11 is not inclusive. I don't understand this one. Oh, I think I know. Meaning is 1 to 10, right?
Yes,
Not in-
exactly. That's the meaning. So the last value for whenever you will define a for loop will not be, it's not included. So whenever you want some value, if you want till 9, then you write 10, and then it will be like 10 is not in. That's the meaning.
understand. Okay.
Let's just execute and see what happens.
1 to 9. Yeah.
Yeah, so it will print only the last value will be 9. Basically, this
Okay.
is the syntax. In Java, we
This,
used to define what is the starting value, what is the increment, and then what is
this
the,
this one a bit weird lor, in Rust. Other programming language is not like this.
yeah. This is little different from the others. So it's just 2 dots and the first value and the last value.
Yeah, usually other programming languages they'll print 1 to 10, but this one like omit the last one and then print 1 to 9.
Yeah. So if I give 11 here,
Yeah, I know. You
I
give
think
1
so.
to
Then it is, yeah. So it will print 10. So it's up to you how you code it. It will make the changes. Obviously, if I do 100 here, then it will print all the 99 values.
understand.
It's up to you. Whatever you define here, it will work that way.
Mm.
So, yeah. What will happen if I remove this block?
Uh, there's no differences.
Let's try that. Right? There's no difference.
There's no
It's
differences.
again printing 99 values. But why are we using continue here?
You should use a break here if you want. Continue meaning you don't do anything but skip this chunk of code.
So we can put a condition over here that if x is 5, then maybe
Yeah, if you do like this, then number 5 x is 5 will be printed 2 times.
something like this. I mean, I'm just randomly saying that how we can use it basically. So somewhere in between, yes, it will
Yeah.
print this also.
Oh, 5 is not is printed one time only. So when you continue, it's like skipping the you go to the next number. I thought 5 is
Yeah,
printing.
because no. It's in the loop, it is going only one time. So as soon as it prints here, goes to continue, means it has to go to the next step, and it comes over here, uh, it will automatically go to the next loop. It won't like the statement will come here. The compiler.
Mm,
Okay, let's do one. We will know exactly what's happening. We have used this print statement twice. One is when its value is 5, one is every time,
mm,
right? And then
I
we'll
see.
see what happens. See, for 5, it's not printing that again.
Mm,
Only done this.
I
For
understand.
all the others, there is the value is this and x is this, both of them. So this, what does this continue doing? That
Continue means stop the operation and go to the next number in the
exactly
looping.
so after the loop, whatever code is there, it won't execute that code and go to
Yeah,
the next. Now this is while loop, so let's do a little bit quick example of the while loop. You're clear with the for loop, right?
yeah, I'm clear. Usually we use for loop in all the in our job. We don't use while loop
Yeah.
or do
The
while. Yeah,
maximum times the loop that is used is a for loop.
yeah, usually it's for loop.
Very easy and simple also. But I'll let to just comment this so that we have just one print and it's more clear what's happening. So we're defining x is 0. We're saying that less than 10 print. And
Yeah,
we are
what
putting on
while loop is not good as for loop because it is putting the declaration outside and then it put the increment inside, which is look more cleaner in for loop.
yeah, exactly. Because for loop it itself has a predefined working that it will increment. We know that
Yeah,
if we don't define, it will increment on its own.
yeah,
But for while we have to define what is it. So if I
yeah,
don't increment, I put a minus.
yeah. Maybe to some programmer it is more flexible, but I don't think. Yeah,
Yeah, even
for
I
loop.
preferred as a programmer, I preferred always for loop. I never
Yeah,
preferred while.
yeah, you are right.
Yes, I said x minus equals to 1 and it's not compiling. I don't know what.
X minus. Oh yeah, yeah. This one is like you don't print anything. I think
But
because
it's
the value become -1 after execute this line of code and then it memory not enough. Yeah, so it should don't print anything because X already -1 and can I think it can print
going,
infinite. Yeah, it is
yeah,
like infinite printing and then that's why
exactly.
yeah that's
It's gone
why
in an infinite situation.
infinite situation.
So that was an infinite loop because over here we have said that x less than 10. So if I put minus, it can be any number. What will it print,
You put
right?
minus. Okay. I don't see the minus.
Either, I have removed that again.
Okay.
Just change it. I'm saying that if I put minus and I put the condition as x less than 10, then it will take me to an infinite situation. That's what I'm saying. Because now minus less than 10, that can be any number of numbers, right? Anything less than 10 is goes in minus, so everything will be. We can't print everything, so it will go in here and then yeah. It will print twice, right, over here?
Uh, it will print 10 times uh the sentence with inside loop and then print one time the sentence with outside loop.
So I guess we are done for the session. I think so. I've covered everything with you.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Your break statement is there. Let
Yeah,
me
break I also
continue.
understand.
Continue. We have done. Break is like to exit from that statement. Do you want me to do a code for this, or it's fine?
Hey, this one a bit different. It is using loop keyword, not do while. Yeah, this one loop is a different thing, right?
Okay. Let's write a code quickly so that we understand it's more clear.
So this is not while, and this is not for loop. It's just a loop keyword. It's quite
Yes, so we have three loops in Rust. One is with the keyword for, as we have in all the other programming languages. One is loop itself. Even loop word is for a loop.
yeah.
Here,
In
so we have.
Java, there's no loop, but they have
So
do
no
while.
other language has. I've not seen it in any other language, but for the first time in Rust, I've seen that there is a loop for a loop. Okay,
Understand?
and while loop we just use. So let's quickly execute first, and then we'll see how it's behaving. Okay. So first there is an increment. Like the while loop, we have to make an increment, but we don't have to put any condition.
Mm.
For while we were putting a condition, for loop keyword, it's only okay. This piece of code has to be executed multiple times. We don't have a condition here. We have a print statement. What is the value, and then a break. Where to break. That is the way it works. If I put here x not 15. Will
Uh,
it run and will it not run?
I don't
What
think it
error
can.
will it give?
I think it cannot
Let's
run.
see. What error will it give?
I do know what error, but error on line 13. Expected open delimiter.
It's anything it doesn't identify, it will say expected open delimiter. That's a very common error. That means there's some syntax issue, basically. Less than, then will it work?
Less than should work.
And if I change this value 15 to 30, or maybe let's take a larger value. If I take it to 50, will it work? It's the same
Mm.
every time. So now you know why we are using break, how we are using the loops, the conditions,
Yeah, I don't.
the concept of string literals and creating a new object. All of this is clear. If you have any questions.
Hope this session was helpful for any programmer who is willing to learn Rust as a beginner. Next, we will cover more on Rust, so stay tuned for more. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and keep coding.